Imagine standing on the edge of the world, staring into a frozen abyss. Ernest Shackleton and his crew weren't just explorers, they were pioneers risking everything for glory. But Antarctica had other plans, and what started as a bold mission turned into the greatest survival story ever told. In August 1914, Sir Ernest Shackleton set sail aboard the Endurance, leading 27 men into the unknown. Their goal? To cross Antarctica on foot. But when the Weddell Sea's ice closed in, the crew's dreams were shattered. Trapped, isolated, and thousands of miles from help, their true journey, one of survival, was about to begin. By January 1915, the crew of the Endurance found themselves surrounded. The Weddell Sea was no longer a path, it was a prison. Pack ice, once thin and fragmented, had become a solid wall, encasing the ship from all sides. Shackleton ordered his men to wait, hoping the summer thaw would release them. Days turned to weeks. The groaning ice grew louder, its movements relentless, pressing against the hull like a giant, unseen hand. For months, the Endurance drifted with the ice. The men kept their spirits up, playing games, hunting seals, and working on their equipment. But Shackleton knew the truth: the ice wouldn't let them go. It was only a matter of time before it crushed their lifeline, and they would be left alone on the frozen wasteland. October 27, 1915. The ice delivered its final blow. The crew awoke to a sound that sent chills through their bones, the sound of splintering wood. The Endurance, trapped for nearly 10 months, could hold on no longer. The ship groaned and cracked as the ice squeezed harder, like a predator crushing its prey. Shackleton knew what had to be done. He gave the order to abandon ship. The men worked frantically, hauling supplies, food, and lifeboats onto the ice. They watched as their ship, the vessel that had carried their dreams, slipped beneath the surface, swallowed by the frozen sea. For the first time, Shackleton and his crew were completely on their own, stranded on an ever-shifting ice floe, with no shelter, no ship, and no hope of rescue. Stranded on an endless expanse of ice, Shackleton's men fought to survive the impossible. The temperature plummeted to -40 degrees, and food became scarce. Shackleton, ever the leader, refused to let despair take hold. He kept the men busy, hunting seals, repairing sledges, and finding ways to stay hopeful in the monotony of their frozen prison. For months, they drifted on the ice floe, living in tents, eating what little they could hunt, and enduring the biting Antarctic winds. They sang songs, told stories, and clung to the belief that Shackleton would find a way to save them. But as the ice began to break up beneath their feet, Shackleton knew the time had come to move once again. Their next journey would test every ounce of their strength. April 1916. With the ice breaking apart, Shackleton made the call to leave. Using 3 salvaged lifeboats, the crew launched into the freezing Southern Ocean. For 5 days, they rowed through towering waves and freezing winds, bodies numb, hands bleeding from the oars. Their destination, Elephant Island, a desolate, rocky spit of land that offered their only hope for shelter. The journey was brutal. Icy saltwater soaked the men, and frostbite gnawed at their limbs. Waves as tall as buildings threatened to capsize their small boats. But Shackleton's leadership held them together. At last, after days of unimaginable suffering, they spotted Elephant Island. For the first time in months, the men stood on solid ground. But it was not yet salvation, only survival. Elephant Island gave the crew solid ground, but it was far from salvation. Shackleton knew no ship would pass by this remote, lifeless rock. Their only hope lay 800 miles away, South Georgia Island, home to a whaling station. But to reach it, Shackleton would have to sail through one of the most treacherous oceans on Earth in a single lifeboat, the James Caird, barely 22 feet long. With 5 of his strongest men, Shackleton launched into the Southern Ocean. They faced relentless storms, freezing rain, and waves that rose higher than buildings. The sea tore at them day and night, their lifeboat tossed like a toy on the furious water. Their clothes were soaked, their hands numb, their rations scarce. And yet, Shackleton's leadership carried them forward, one wave at a time, through what many would call a suicide mission. After 16 days at sea, Shackleton and his men reached South Georgia Island. But the whaling station lay on the opposite side, and between them stood 32 miles of unexplored, mountainous terrain. Without maps, climbing equipment, or rest, Shackleton, Frank Worsley and Tom Crean set off on foot. They trudged through snowfields, climbed icy peaks, and descended treacherous cliffs. For 36 hours straight, they pushed forward, fueled only by raw determination and a will to save their crew. As dawn broke on the second day, they heard the faint sound of a whistle, proof that the whaling station was near. Moments later, they stumbled into Stromness Station, gaunt and broken but victorious. Shackleton had reached help. The rescue of his men could finally begin. Shackleton and his men returned to a world that had changed. War still raged across Europe, and their incredible story of survival went largely unnoticed at first. But their journey became a legend, a testament to human endurance, leadership, and the refusal to surrender, even when the odds seemed impossible. The men of the Endurance had spent nearly 2 years battling the harshest conditions on Earth. They survived because they believed in each other and in their leader. Shackleton's promise, that he would not lose a single man, had been fulfilled. Shackleton's Endurance expedition remains the greatest survival story in history. It was not about glory or success, but about courage, unity, and the strength of the human spirit. Shackleton's leadership under impossible circumstances has become a beacon for leaders, adventurers, and dreamers alike. "Through endurance, we conquer," Shackleton once said. His journey reminds us that the most powerful victories are not those won over nature, but those won over ourselves. The Endurance may have been lost to the ice, but its story lives on. Shackleton and his men proved that in the face of impossible odds, the human spirit can achieve the unimaginable. Their legacy reminds us that endurance is not just survival, it's the refusal to quit when everything around you says you should. This is the story of Ernest Shackleton, the Endurance, and the men who defied nature to become legends.
Thanks for watching, and subscribe my channel.